Hello, boys and girls. There are a couple things we got on the docket. Well, there are several things we got on the docket today. Well, alright, there are several next steps that we need to take. Some of those may happen today. Well, some of them will happen today. What we just did for fret markers on the GGBO build, we also need to do on Kai's guitar with the aluminum and black. That's going to be sexy as hell. We have nut blanks, finally. I didn't realize I didn't have any 1/4 inch nut blanks. I do now. So on both of them we can start fitting the head plate. And I mean, that's to turn this into an absolute actual neck. We need to get the head plate on with the nut fitted, so that we can get the headstock down to its actual final depth, which will let us finish carving the volute and carving the neck. Then it's a neck. Other than frets, that's the only thing we're missing. So we need to get on that. Alright, we just did this yesterday on the GGBO guitar, so it feels a little weird rehashing the same tasks and just recording all this all over again. But in the, spirit of completeness, I mean, it needs to be on this series too. So I taped my frets, where my fret markers are going to go. For one thing, that lets me draw on the zero coat a lot easier and see, see a lot easier where marks are supposed to be, but also make sure I stay on the right frets. What I normally do, on the lower end, I'll do the bass side, and on the higher end, I do the treble side. I put me a mark a 1/4 inch off of the edge of the inside of the binding, okay, and a mark just slightly more than a 1/4 inch off of the fret slot. So that's where these are getting placed. Down here, you quickly run into a situation where slightly more than a 1/4 inch is more than half, so these are all centered. Now in the past I've also done, double dots at the 24th, just like the GGBO this time. I think we're going to just leave truss rod access as 24th. It's the last one, you'll know it's 24. Partly because what we're going to be doing is I have a little aluminum tube that is going to be these fret markers, and we'll fill that with black plastic. But because of that, they're bigger than I normally do, so there's really not room on the 24th for it. Okay, so spots are marked. I have poked them, so we're ready to go drill. GGBO was brass tubes, which was a lot harder to work with than the aluminum, so this should go pretty quick and easy. Famous last words. Going, but here's what it is. Fairly certain we're just fine. We got a hole, it's nice and centered. It's good. I think that went pretty well. I love it when it starts getting pretty. Then things really start to get interesting. And get more and more motivation to polish it up even further. This is going to be awesome. Alright, I used a little pipe cutter to cut these as short as I could get them, which isn't very short in reality. And of course that crimps the end, but since we are long, that gives me a little bit of a bevel to help me get into the hole, because these are tight. And then we'll file the top down so that opening will open back up the way it should be. So, just like I did on the GGBO guitar, this file is pretty ruthless and brutal. We'll use that for the majority of it until we get down close, and then I've got a much nicer one that will get nice and clean. Then we'll super glue the plastic in and go from there. And then file the whole thing down, and then probably give it a little once over with the radiusing block. Meanwhile, I was trying to decide. I have a smaller aluminum tube and material for the middle. I thought about maybe doing the same thing for the side dots, but I don't know that it would really show up as well, and you know, the side dots are what I care the most about. So I think we're just going to go with plain old white. And you know, with the binding and everything, I think it'll look good that way. So I believe that's our plan. Alright, I learned the hard way yesterday that I really don't want metal shavings in my fret slots. So at least for the big part, we're gonna cover them up. Alright, before we get to the others, I'm thinking we can go ahead and plant the plastic in these so they can be drying while we cut the others. I'm just going to put a tiny drop, hopefully in the middle-ish. Try not to get a bunch of super glue all over my fretboard, but you know, there's only so much you can do. Should have gone with acetone. This will melt into there. But this It's not a super tight fit, but I mean it's good. It'll be fine. Just something to maybe think about next time. Sassy. Alright, after we make sure our slots are ironed out, we will polish up to, I don't know, some big number paper. In the meantime, that looks outstanding. This is going to be super sexy. Marked my spots and then drew me a line about an eighth off of the edge, which is maybe ever so slightly closer to the bottom of the fretboard than it is to the top. I mean, the binding. It's going to be centered on the fretboard, but a little off because of the veneer. But it's going to be awesome. So. Buddy. Alright, we're at a exciting / terrifying point where it's about time for the head plate. I don't have a real great strategy for this. I'm basically going to chop off just enough that we get past the nut line, and then we'll worry about working down to a 1/4 inch away from the nut line. Yeah. So I suppose we better start just by chopping that off, and then we'll figure out how to get the angle into it, which probably will be done with like a safety file, honestly. Anyway, choppy, cut. Yeah, so it is just barely inside there. Yeah. But at least now we don't have to fight with, we can actually see what we're dealing with. Honestly, looks like there's a little bit of a hump in this. How can that be? There's probably a little bit of bowing in this as well, but and honestly, our slope didn't quite come up to the 1/4 inch mark, so we may need to work this down just a little. And honestly, I wouldn't mind if it was a little thinner anyway. I do want to preserve my center line though. Alright, I got us clamped, I think, where we want to be. Alright, and I put the nut on here up against the fretboard and drew a line. Trying to cut right behind the line. Using this file could take days. Looks like we did a fairly decent job of trying to be relatively vertical. I wish this file was a little more aggressive. No, I wish I had a file like this that was more aggressive. Probably good enough. I believe that's going to work. The angle looks good. We probably should have cut this just a little more oversized so we had room for adjusting. There are a couple tiny places where it's going to be real close. But this head shape is not set in stone. It's not terribly important that this shape stays the way it is. So, you know, if the back overlaps the top in a tiny little place or two, it's not a big deal. We'll just shape it so that it's not. That is going to be so cool. Alright, well, it's it's a load off to know that that is actually done and ready. So, we can take your time. We may go ahead and dig out that logo, and I think it's probably just going to go all the way through. However, you know, then we'll have squeeze out into the cavity and bleh. Of course, no. I was going to say we could, you know, glue the inlay in at the same time, but hell no. We got to do other work on this. We got to be able to sand it and junk like that. We can't have a logo in the way. Yeah. Alrighty then. Well, we made some good progress on Kiddo's guitar. Now maybe a little GGBO. Okay. As I talked about, I took my little Japanese pull saw and pulled out one of the new blades, which is exactly like the old one. So I got it replaced, had the old blade out. That thing is not easy to cut. That stuff, I don't know what it's made out of, but it's definitely hardened. Okay, so between a hacksaw and some tin snips, I was able to chop off chunks of the blade and made this ghetto-tastic contraption. which I'm still convinced is not a bad idea. It's just, it as wide as it is, it's hard to see what the hell you're doing, so not a real great solution. Alright, one of the offcuts of the blade, I filed the teeth off, most of it, left a little toothbrushy thing, and just taped a couple little strips of maple just to make a damn handle. Alright, well, it served our purposes here because I can check every slot. I know that those teeth are about as deep as a fret tang. So as long as the teeth disappear in the slot, we're good. And there's really no place that I really had to work it. Everything looks good. There were a couple that kind of felt pretty shallow, but they're not shallow enough to worry about, as it turns out. So it appears. So, I thought, to celebrate, we'll just move on to polishing this fretboard, and then we can move on. I want to get the head plate on soon, but I think I want to do the logo first. And I don't exactly feel like doing that right now, so save that for another time. Shiny. That is so cool. If I do say so myself. Yep, that's one sexy board. Thanks for joining me. If you like what we're doing, if you're digging it, like and subscribe. Catch you next time.